everybody, welcome back to our channel. My name is Brianna Wilson. I am the founder and occupational therapist behind Freedom and Function located in Austin, Texas. So today I wanted to briefly discuss how to prevent a shoulder subluxation after a stroke. And if you aren't familiar with what a shoulder subluxation is, I'm going to post a picture here so that you can better understand what I'm talking about as I'm talking about it, okay? Now there are two main ways that a shoulder subluxation can happen, okay? One is due to gravity, and two is due to someone pulling on the affected arm, okay? So let me tell you essentially what's happening. So if this is the socket, this is the head of the humerus, and this is the humerus, okay? This is the joint together, okay? So with gravity, if the shoulder muscles are weak or paralyzed and they're not strong enough to keep this in socket, what happens with gravity is that it starts to slowly pull it out of the socket and causes a partial dislocation, okay? Now, same thing, if the muscles are weak and someone's pulling on your affected arm, if somebody pulls on my arm, my muscles are strong enough to keep it where it needs to be, and I can also pull back if I need to. I would rather someone not pull on my arm, but the muscles are strong enough to hold everything in place like it should be. But if the muscles are weak or paralyzed, it can't function to that degree, right? And so if someone's pulling on your arm constantly, whether they're trying to help position you or turn you or stitch you up, that can cause a lot of damage. And so it's always easier to prevent a shoulder subluxation than it is to try to treat it through rehabilitation after the fact, okay? And so there's two main ways to help prevent a shoulder subluxation. One is through positioning, and two is through making sure that you are not pulling on the affected arm. Really, you should not be pulling on any arms at all, but definitely not the affected arm. If you want to position someone, you want to use their back, okay, to help move them. You don't want to pull on their arm, okay? So you want to make sure you're reaching all the way to their back to help sit them up, but do not pull on their arm, okay? That's number one. And then with positioning, okay, positioning has to start as soon as the stroke occurs. So right when the person is still in the hospital, positioning is so important. And this has to carry on until the shoulder muscles are strong enough to support the joint by itself. This is not something that you can just do for a short stint and then expect for everything to be okay. Okay, you have to keep that arm supported. You have to do what the shoulder muscles are not able to do, okay? So the easiest way to position someone is going to be with something like pillows or wedges, okay? And so what we're looking at is the shoulders, okay? So the shoulders should be somewhat even. Now, some of us, due to our posture or something like that, maybe there's like a slight discrepancy just naturally with, how we sit. But if there is a pretty significant difference, you want to make sure that you're supporting it. And even in the beginning, maybe they are looking pretty good. But if you notice that the person cannot lift their own arm up or things like that, over time, this can cause issues because these muscles are still not going to be strong enough to keep this in socket. So you want to add a little support underneath the elbow and forearm to help support that joint in place. Okay, so I've scooted back so we can go over some things about positioning. So number one thing is you want to first check their pelvis, because if the pelvis is off, so for example, if I'm more on this side, I'm naturally going to have a tendency to be leaning towards this side. So if you were to prop up my arm, though that's helpful, I'm still not really in the greatest of positions, okay? So you always want to check the pelvis first and make sure that they're sitting evenly on their sits bones. They're sitting evenly on the bottom, okay? And if not, you want to adjust the pelvis first, okay? Then we can address the rest. So just as a quick tip, whenever we're positioning this arm, we want to first make sure that the shoulders are even, okay? So we don't want it super propped up here, right? We don't want it to be in a situation where our arm is like way up here, because that's not great posture either, and that's going to cause issue with the back muscles, our trunk muscles, all that stuff, okay? But we also don't want the arm positioned where it's super internally rotated, which means that the forearm is close to the body, because typically the internal rotators are going to be a lot stronger and it's a more comfortable position. So sometimes when we position someone into this position, they kind of get stuck and it gets hard to get them out of that position, okay? And so our internal rotators, the muscles that allow us to make this movement, are typically stronger than the muscles that allow us to make this movement, okay? And so if possible, I'm not in the greatest chair, I'm in a computer chair, but if possible, you want to position them in a way that their forearm can be in a neutral position, so kind of like straight, or just slightly internally rotated. You don't want to position their hand too close to their body, okay? So kind of somewhere in this range here is ideal, okay? Another thing that you want to keep in mind is the hand. We don't want to position them where the hand is dangling down off of the pillow or the wedge or whatever you're using to help position them, because that's what can cause swelling and further complications. So you want to make sure that the elbow is supported. You don't want the elbow hanging off, right? Because that's not helping my shoulders. And you don't want the hand hanging off because that's not helping my hand. The whole elbow to forearm to fingertips needs to be supported, okay? And so like I said, and so I'm in a computer chair, right? So there's really no ideal way to do this in a computer chair, but the key thing is that the elbow is supported. So I might want to lift this part up a little bit because my elbow's kind of falling down, and I want to make sure that this is here. So sometimes you might need to turn the pillow a little bit, okay? But the thing is, this, we don't want it too close to the body, okay? We don't want the fingertips dangling off of the pillow, okay? And we want our shoulders to be even, okay? So shoulders even, the elbows supported, the forearm and hand are supported, and we're not too internally rotated, too close to the body. So it just kind of takes some adjusting of the pillow. Sometimes depending on the seating surface, so whether they're in a chair or in a bed, sometimes one pillow is enough, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes they need two pillows to keep the shoulders even and to keep the arms supported, okay? And so that's the most important thing. And you want to also make sure that the person is comfortable. You want to always check and ask, like, are you comfortable? Because if they're not comfortable, that means that something could be improperly positioned, or you could just be causing them pain. And we don't want to do either of those things. So just double check, you know, make sure you've checked the shoulders, make sure the elbows supported, the forearm and hand is supported, make sure nothing's dangling. Sometimes you might need an extra pillow to help sit them up if they're kind of like leaned over, because obviously this pillow's here, right? But if the pillow's here, like this doesn't really look that great, even though my forearm's supported. My shoulders don't really look that even, right? But I'm also kind of like over here. You want to make sure that they're sitting evenly. And once that's been addressed, then you can address the other issues. So for example, if a person is kind of even, but they don't have the trunk control to keep themselves upright, then you might want to add a pillow here, okay? So you might want to add a pillow to their side. And I'm not in an ideal chair, I'm in a computer chair, right? But you want to might add something here to kind of help. And some people just need that input to help them kind of figure out where they are in space, and some people might need a little bit more help than that. The assist might need to come more higher up on the trunk to kind of help position them. It just kind of depends, okay? But check that pelvis first, because sometimes that's a big part of the issue. And like I said, it takes some adjusting. It's not perfect. Depending on what the body's doing, you may notice that, oh, you know, when I do it like this, it's fine, but then other days I do the same thing and he's too leaned over, she's too leaned over, the shoulders don't seem to be balanced today, or something like that. So it really is just trial and error. But if you just make sure that the shoulders are even, the elbow, forearm, and hand are supported and nothing is dangling, and that they're sitting upright, you should be fine. Because the biggest thing is that we just have to add support to where the support is lacking. And so in this case, the support is lacking here, so we need something to help give it that support that it can't give itself, okay? All right, guys, so I really do hope that this video was helpful and that it gives you an idea of how to best use positioning to prevent shoulder subluxations. And also remember, please do not pull on the arm or let someone pull on your arm, okay? Protect that shoulder, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye, guys.